This video is stocking the fallout shelter, part 2, equipment and gear. Now just to review for you, part 1 covered the consumable items. That is your highest priority to make sure is inside your fallout shelter or that you bring with you to an improvised shelter. In part 1, I covered some information for you as to what is fallout, how is it measured, when is it dangerous, and what can it do to you. I also covered in that video your important items, first starting with water, then food, and then first aid. In this video we are going to talk about and show you examples of the different items and equipment that will make your stay in a fallout shelter more comfortable, potentially help prepare you at least mentally, psychologically for what you could encounter once you exit the shelter, and some of the equipment that you could use when you do exit the shelter and you see the new world that lies before you after a nuclear exchange. Now just to remind you, everything within 3 miles of a nuclear strike is going to be obliterated. Anyone within that 3 miles will be killed instantly or will be dead in a matter of minutes. Out to 25 miles, you're going to receive so much radiation from that initial blast. You may survive for a few hours, maybe a few days, but all that is going to be a very painful death as everything in your body starts shutting down. If you're past the 25-mile mark from a strike zone, you do have a chance to survive if you have a shelter that is pre-stocked and prepared for this eventuality. Now I'll tell you that even civil defense recommended in the 1950s, 1960s, a fallout shelter didn't have to be only used for a nuclear exchange event. It could double as something else. Your fallout shelter could work as a tornado shelter if you're in Tornado Alley. It could work as your storm shelter. It could work as your storage space for your home canning items, the stuff that you do at home at the end during harvest season. Keep that inside your shelter, and that's also part of your food stock if you have to use your shelter. Civil defense also recommended it could be used as a workshop. So then you would have the tools in there that you may need for after a strike to help rebuild. Everything's already in there, hopefully in decent condition. They also recommended that a fallout shelter could be used as a spare bedroom. There's lots of different things you can do with a fallout shelter to conceal what its true purpose is, but that shelter still would need to be stocked and ready to go if need be. All the items you need in there, inside cabinets, inside a closet, whatever it is, however you decide to hide your fallout shelter. Now, someone did leave a comment on the last part of this series that they have personally seen, when they have looked at homes, fallout shelters from back during the Cold War that have been repurposed and ruined. I think talked about one fallout shelter they seen at the end of the Cold War. Someone had cut massive windows into the side walls to let in natural light into the space. That destroys its protection factors. I've seen shelters that people have turned them into storage areas and furnace rooms and stuff like that. I know one particular home I looked at before I got my current property. That fallout shelter, someone turned it into their utility space. So they ended up boring holes through the wall so they could run duct work and they could run the power cables and that stuff. And then the old utility space, their old furnace room, they turned that into a home theater. If you are lucky enough to have a fallout shelter on your property left over from the Cold War, and if it's economical for you to be able to do it, go through, restore it, improve it, maybe expand on it. I would recommend take those old plans from during the Cold War and expand onto them. Potentially add an additional room onto it. That additional room would be your storeroom that you would keep all your supplies in, so that main fallout shelter space, you have a better living area, more square footage per person that has to stay inside there. Surviving a nuclear war is possible. You just have to put some distance and some dense material between you and the source of the radiation, and then wait it out as that radiation dies quickly. Remember the 7-10 rule. I talked about it in part 1. Now we're going to move on to the different equipment and gear to make your stay more comfortable and to help you when you exit your shelter. The next item in level of priority after your first aid is communications. And during my training as a Gen X student back during the Cold War, they told us to always make sure to have a battery-powered radio, such as one of these type you can get at a thrift store. It could even be the old-style giant boombox. Just make sure you have batteries for it. The reason for the radios is so that you can hear the news broadcasts. You can find out what's going on. Most importantly, so that you can find out what are the radiation levels in your area. And I recommend for that having a notebook with a pen or a pencil that you can write down the date and the time of those announcements over the radio so you can keep track of it. And you can notice if that radiation spikes upward again because of potentially nuclear power plants starting to melt down, spewing out fresh fallout across your area. Now, something that's gotten a lot cheaper, a lot more compact since the end of the Cold War are these multi-power type radios. This particular one, I guarantee there's better ones than this now. It has solar on it, battery. You can hook up a adapter to it to run it off regular power. It also has a crank on the side, also that it will charge up the rechargeable battery, which is integral into here. You just want a radio to pick up those signals that you can get that valuable information to know what's going on outside your shelter. Now, other items that you could potentially have that would be useful would be some type of two-way communication. Could be a CB, a ham radio, shortwave, something that you can monitor more locally. They do make battery-powered versions of CBs and all that stuff, but their range isn't as good as models like this that ran off of regular power. Also would recommend possibly a scanner that is programmed for your area. Not this particular one. This is about 50 years old. It's an old crystal scanner, meaning it had cut crystals inside here which were preset to certain frequencies that would monitor the emergency services in that area. They have been making them for decades now, ones that are programmable. You don't need crystals, and you can, program the frequency in there so that you can monitor firefighters, you can monitor law enforcement, you can monitor the ambulance, you can monitor NOAA, and it could be the communities around you also. They do make those also at battery power. Regardless on your electronics, make sure you have either a good supply of batteries, the correct batteries for that particular piece of equipment, or if you're running off of some type of what we referred to in the military as common battery. It's your local power source. In a fallout shelter, you have two options for that. It could be car batteries that you have set up a power system on with the inverter or whatever's needed to translate it to the correct energy needed for your electronics. The other option is having an actual generator. And if you have a generator, make sure it is multi-fueled, that it doesn't just run off of diesel, doesn't just run off of gasoline. They do make conversion kits, and some generator companies will actually put them on the generator if you order it. So it will be a multi-fuel. Make sure if you have a generator, you also have some basic spare parts for it, and you have the tools, and you have a written copy, paper copy of the manual for how to maintain that generator. Run that generator sparingly, as little as possible, just to run what you need off of it. Another safety note I'm going to point out for you: do not have any of this stuff already hooked up to an external antenna before a strike occurs. Remember, there's that little thing called EMP. You don't want that EMP getting picked up by that external antenna outside your shelter, coming down that wire and frying out your electronics. Do not hook up your electronics to an external antenna till a few hours after the strike. You do not know if that strike that occurred was the total strike, everything going off, or if there's another wave that's still on the way in. Give it a few hours before you start hooking up your electronics. If you build your fallout shelter correctly, you improve it correctly, you turn it into a Faraday cage, and you're not going to get a signal off a regular antenna, you have to have an external. Now, the next item in importance for inside your shelter is sanitation. The number one item, a privy. Now, back during the Cold War, we were actually taught as kids to get a hold of these smaller trash cans. They were like 10 or 12, 15 gallon metal ones, and you would line them with 2 layers of trash bags, and that would be your toilet. Things have improved. General 5-gallon bucket with a good tight fitting lid, rubber gasketed. Take this, line it with 2 good plastic bags. Have a seat for on top. They do make these sets already. You can purchase them online. They come with a seat that can be put on top of here. Some of them actually have a tight fitting lid that will come down over the seat, so you don't have to take it off and put the lid on after using. You just close the lid, seal it up. Now, something that is also available out there, you can probably come across at a thrift store. I've seen a few of these. They do make these like toilet chairs. They're used in hospitals, used in nursing homes. Basically, it'll do the same thing as having a toilet seat to put on the bucket here, but it's going to be more comfortable. It's wider. It's going to be a lot more stable than sitting on top of a 5-gallon bucket. You would have that seat, had the bucket underneath it, do your stuff inside the bucket, close it up, and there you go. Now, for using the privy inside a fallout shelter. After each usage, you add a little bit of material in there to soak up fluids. Now, I'm not talking your clay cat litter. I'm talking paper litter. I have seen it in stores where they have paper pellet cat litters. Maybe have a few bags of those, even if you don't have a cat. that after you get an inch of urine inside here, maybe add a few of those pellets onto that to soak some of that up. And I would also recommend have something that you can sprinkle inside here after every time you drop a deuce to help cut down on the smell. It could be a little bit of baking soda, it could be some type of powdered deodorizer, but even a carpet deodorizer or carpet freshener could probably help in this situation. Now, once this bucket gets up to about 2/3, definitely not over 3/4, that is when you need to change out your bag. So the first thing you will do is you will tie off the inner bag. Bring that together, twist it up, get the air out, hopefully not directly into your face. Tie that off tight so that it does not leak. Then you will take the outer plastic bag up over the top of that one, do the same thing. Then you will take your 5-gallon bucket here by the handle and you will take it over to where you are collecting your refuse. This hopefully will be a large metal trash can with 2 trash bags inside there, because if you're adding this to it, you're going to want that additional layer to prevent spillage. Remove the bag from in here carefully, place it inside that trash can without puncturing it. You will then reline your bucket with 2 plastic bags, one inside the other, put the lid back on, and put it back in its privy location. Now, how much toilet paper should you have to use your privy? The guidance from Civil Defense was 1 roll of toilet paper per person per week. Plan accordingly. Now, the next part of sanitation is showers. You may set up a abbreviated type of shower cell inside your shelter. You may not. The easiest thing to do, though, is baby wipes. To do, as we used to call it in the military, a bitch bath. You use baby wipes to wipe yourself down. Now, the first thing that you do, that you wipe down first, and it will be in this order, you want to hit the areas where you sweat the most. First your armpits, then behind your knees, then your crotch, then your feet. Then that baby wipe gets put inside your privy. The next baby wipe you use, or the next couple, will be to wipe down the rest of your body. And remember, the last location that you wipe with those wipes is your rear end, and then those baby wipes get put inside your privy. Now, if you use a sponge bath or you set up a shower, I would recommend that you look up how submariners, especially in the U.S. Navy, took showers during World War II. How that worked, they had a few seconds, wet their head, wet their body. They then went through, sudsed up as best they could, not a huge amount, just enough to get the job done, put a little bit of soap inside their hair. Then turn the water on for a few more seconds to rinse off. They were done. You then dried off and put your cleaner clothes on. Another option that I would recommend to have in there is some type of small plastic basin that you can put water inside and then use a washcloth and some soap to clean your face. It wouldn't hurt to have a small mirror so that the females can look at that. It's a vanity thing, it's a morale thing, so that they can go through, clean their faces up or whatever, check themselves over, and make sure that they're in decent shape. I would also recommend having on hand some shaving cream and disposable razors for guys that they can shave if they so choose to. Now, I would recommend inside your fallout shelter to have, for each person, one towel, which will be just theirs. That's their personal property. That will help them with their morale and psychology. Washcloth. 1 bar of soap inside a container. Toothbrush inside toothbrush case. 1 tube of toothpaste. If you so choose, you could include baby powder, but that's your choice on that. I know there's research about it could cause cancer, but if you do more research into that, you find out that's from excessive use of baby powder, where basically a woman was using an entire bottle every single day. But baby powder does help with cutting down on the moisture and that stuff, especially after a bitch bath. Now, you only need to take your showers 1 per week. Something I did forget to mention, hand sanitizer. Get some bottles of this to use this after you use your privy. And if before you would prepare food for people in your shelter, definitely use some hand sanitizer. Now, the next item on the list is bedding. Really 2 options on this. Get yourself a basic sleeping bag for camping. A good one made by Coleman's or some other well-known company. They usually work the best. They're also not that expensive, even brand new. Sometimes you'll luck out, you'll come across them at garage sales or at thrift stores at a really good price. I always pick them up. Your next option after that, wool blanket. At least 1. Per person, this is that person's personal blanket. This particular one down here is an Israeli military surplus blanket. These are some of the cheapest wool blankets I found on the market, and they're actually pretty comfortable. They're not itchy like some of them. Now, if you want to, you could also issue them, say, a sheet for using underneath the blanket, or however they choose, you know, as they're sleeping and stuff. Not a requirement. You're in a fallout shelter. Austerity is a thing. You're not going to die from austerity. If you want to include pillows, you could. Not a major requirement. In the military, if I didn't use my Kevlar helmet as my pillow, another thing that I would use was a jacket. Roll that up, use that as a basic pillow, and it worked. Now, the next item, or next category, lighting. Back during the Cold War, you had really just the 2 options. You had, say, a flashlight or some type of lantern, a gas lantern. Things have improved dramatically. This particular electric lantern here is one that my parents bought back in the 1980s. And you know what? It's still going strong. I got a hold of it, cleaned it up, and it works. This particular lantern used 6-volt large cell batteries. Hard to find now. They are still out there, but you really got to look for them. Walmart doesn't have them anymore. I found some at a hardware store. And those batteries last an extremely long time. I think over the 40 years that my family had this lantern, we changed the batteries maybe 4 or 5 times. We didn't run this every day. We used it when we were camping or during storms when we lost power. You have brighter lanterns that are out there that use easier to get a hold of batteries, such as this one I did do a video on a while ago. One that uses LED lights, puts out a hell of a lot more lumens, and uses smaller, easier to get a hold of batteries. Another option is another item that I did a video on over the years. This combination light and fan. So this thing's doing 2 duties inside your shelter. It's providing light and moving around some air for circulation, so it doesn't seem as stagnant. Also runs off of basic batteries. And then you can get away with, if you want to, just your basic flashlights. Mag lights always work really good. And these work real good as self-defense tools also. But regardless, if you're going off of some type of light like this, have a good supply of the correct size batteries. Large amounts of them, and make sure to rotate them to keep them fresh. Now, it used to be you kept your batteries inside a refrigerator to get them to last longer. That only worked with the old lead acid batteries, not the lithiums, not the newer batteries. Colder environment actually sucks the power out of those batteries faster. Now, the next light option that you have, which I do not recommend all that much, is ones that require an open flame. I do not recommend using this type of stuff unless you have to. Survival experts do not recommend it. I know companies that make survival bunkers, such as Atlas Survival Shelters, also do not recommend it, because open flames, you had the possibility of starting a fire inside your shelter, and you also had to have carbon monoxide and dioxide being created by the flames. Admittedly, not in large amounts, but it will build up over time. But you have camping lanterns, which run off propane. If you go this route, make sure to have extra propane bottles. You can get candles, such as these large ones that come out around holiday season, around Christmas. This has 3 wicks on it. This will provide a decent amount of light, not great. You have your taper candles, and you can actually sometimes get a bunch of these from like a garage sale or a thrift store. This particular one I remember a bag from a thrift store, gallon bag filled with remnants like this of taper candles, cost me $1. And then your plumber's candles. Remember, plumber's candles have a higher acid content, puts out more heat, and they also last longer than these other candles. If you go with any type of option like this, make sure to have a good supply of matches for when you light them. If you have a lantern like this, I also want to mention, make sure you have the replacement little wicks or bags that are inside here. I can't remember the name of them right now. They do sell them in camping stores. Have a few extras there in case you damage these. Because once they're damaged, you can't use that lantern until you change that little bag out. Now, another item which I do not have here, which you could find very useful, some type of air filter to have inside your shelter. Not just an air filter that cycles the air coming into your shelter, but a filter unit that's inside your shelter that is filtering the air inside there, pulling out those offensive smells such as body odors, fecal matter from your privy, maybe from your food, whatever. And it wouldn't hurt just to have a few room deodorizers that don't require power. Have a few of them there that you can maybe pull one out like a odor neutralizer. Just open it up, set it out in the middle of the shelter to help cut down on any offending smells. Now, this next item is one that was not in our training in schools back during the Cold War for students. Firearms. I recommend having at least one firearm inside your shelter, preferably a rifle. That rifle could be defense and also potentially hunting later. The reason you should have a firearm, and you have the correct equipment for it, extra magazines, loaded, ready to go, cans of ammunition, cleaning kit with additional cleaning supplies to maintain the weapon. The reason you have this stuff is because of that anarchy, that madness that happens when you would be occupying your shelter. When those nukes start going off, that announcement's gone out and people are going insane. Maybe you have a neighbor who knows you have a fallout shelter, knows that you have a whole bunch of food and supplies stocked away, and they think they deserve your supplies. This person may have spent all their money when you've tried to talk to them over the years about, hey, you should be ready if something bad happens. They said, forget you, spent their money on the expensive vacations, constantly bought those expensive toys. Maybe they decided if something happens, they're just going to take what they want from someone else. You need to be able to defend yourself and yours, your family, your loved ones, your friends that are inside your shelter. You need to be prepared to fight off the wolves, to fight off that marauder, that neighbor who's trying to force their way in there, who kept ignoring you as you told them to prepare, and they think you have to give them a seat, you have to give them your stuff. They're now a marauder. They're now an enemy. No warning shots. That's what my unit was told when we were in the desert. Don't waste rounds on warning shots. Shoot to kill. Put the threat down. If you wound that person and they slink off, they could come back with even more people, even more desperate than them, to try to get at you and your stuff. They will kill you and your loved ones to get what you have. You must be prepared to defend yourself and your loved ones. The next category is what we referred to in the military as morale, welfare, and recreation. Items to take your mind off of what's going on outside. Now, civil defense always recommended having a good supply of board games like Walking Dead Monopoly, maybe Axis and Allies Zombie Edition. Games that will take a long time to play all the way through. Chews up a lot of time, takes your mind off of stuff. Barring that, your old fashions. Decks of cards, checkers, chess, Connect Four, whatever you can come up with. You got kids in there? How about Chutes and Ladders? How about the Game of Life? Another thing that Civil Defense recommended, reading materials. Have some books in there to take your mind off of stuff. It could be some books on survival, books on medical, books on fiction, books on history. Your choice. Another thing that's highly recommended, religious materials. Even if you are not a religious person, have a Bible in there, because you may find yourself drawn to it after that event, trying to get answers as to why you survived when so many didn't. Maybe at that time it's finally that moment you start listening to that whisper from the Lord, and you find out about your true Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. To have your true come to Jesus moment. Another option, an improvement now that the Cold War is over, electronics. But remember, whatever electronics you have, make sure to have batteries, or if it runs off your regular power, make sure you got that generator or car batteries or whatever to supply the power. So you can get yourself a laptop. You can upload on it your favorite musics. Maybe you got some books on it. Maybe some movies, some TV shows. And now you finally get the time you can watch them. Another option, which was a big thing when I was in the desert at the beginning of the War on Terror, portable DVD players. Considered archaic now. You can get these cheap as hell at thrift stores and at garage sales. Hell, I know Combat Cameraman was able to get one for like $5 at one garage sale, and this thing still looked brand freaking new. If you go with these, make sure to have some DVDs to go with it. Maybe find out, you want to do a little research as to what's going on, why it's happening. This is a good source to find that out. Maybe you want to see what they used to think would happen at a nuclear war scenario, and you can see if what you're going through matches up with the fictionalized version. Or maybe it's a good time to catch up on those TV series that you've always been meaning to. Time to watch the entire series, binge watch. Battlestar Galactica, Stargate SG-1, Falling Skies, Tour of Duty, Combat, MacGyver, whatever you so choose. Have some in there. Just make sure you have a means to keep these little things running. You don't want it to die out on you because you used up all your power watching your movies and you're still not done with the story. Next item, tools. Have a basic set of tools inside your shelter. Tools that you can do some minor repairs as needed, maybe some minor changes because something didn't quite work the way you wanted it to, or you got to change it so it's more comfortable for someone. You also have to have tools to do extractions of yourself. Things like shovels, pickmatics, sledgehammers, axes, your pry bars, maybe rope, come-alongs, pulleys, some basic tools. Because there's a possibility that your primary entrance into your shelter may have gotten blocked for some reason, and you may have to dig your way out, putting a hole through a wall, or digging around the blockage, or tearing the blockage apart. All fallout shelters should have two means of entrance and exit. Your primary and an emergency that people don't know about except the ones inside. And make sure when you're inside that shelter, you tell everyone and show them where that emergency exit is at. And explain where it comes out at outside the shelter. That exit should come out at a location different. It should come out away from your primary entrance and exit, because you could run the possibility that something fell across it. Maybe if you built it out on a farm, a tree fell across it. Maybe a building fell down on it and it's blocking it. That's why you have emergency exit. Another item that you need to have, fire extinguishers. With fire extinguishers, there's different grades. I would definitely make sure that you had the correct grade for in your shelter. One that is recommended and was recommended by Civil Defense. They used to have water fire extinguishers. You can still find them, usually in antique stores. They used water and a little bit of baking soda. And then you use that, pumped it up, pressurized it, and you sprayed the water on the fire. That type of fire extinguisher will put out less toxic materials that could suffocate you compared to this. So maybe get a hold of one or two of those to have inside your shelter. Don't fill them with water, but have the correct amount of baking soda or whatever other little chemical in that water in there, ready to go. And after you would occupy your shelter, take water that's already set aside in jugs for that fire extinguisher, put it in there, mix it up, and have it ready on that first day that you occupy your shelter. Now, the next item, and the final item I'm going to show you, spare clothing. At a minimum, have changes of the clothes that are going to be directly on your skin. T-shirts, socks, underwears, panties, bras. Have changes of that so that you can swap them out when they start getting dirty, start getting crusty. If you so want to, you could have a bucket set aside with some laundry soap in it that, say, once a week or once every 2 weeks, you take your dirty items, it's your turn. You have some extra water set aside for doing this purpose, wash that clothing. Now, I already told you, with water, you need 1 gallon just for drinking per person per day. You may want to set aside some additional water for cleaning. Now, groups that respond to natural disasters say that they plan for and they allot between 3 to 5 gallons per person they expect to take care of per day. 1 gallon to drink, and between 2 to 4 gallons for other things such as cleaning pots and that stuff at the field kitchen, doing some basic showers, washing clothes. So designate to have some additional water for each person each week for doing personal hygiene, wash themselves down in that little sponge bath, wash clothing, or to use with cleaning dishes. With clothing, have that bucket, have some laundry detergent inside it. You don't need a lot of it, just a little bit inside, say a gallon of water. Wash your stuff up, rinse it out with a little more water, wring it out as best you can, get as much moisture out as possible, hang it out to dry. It's going to take a long time unless there's air moving. Final items that I would say in the clothing category you should plan for was not mentioned in the civil defense stuff back in the 60s and 70s. Protective gear. For at least when you do those first forays out of your fallout shelter. Some type of rubberized suit like this Russian chemical suit. A oversuit that you can put on yourself to keep the fallout from particles from ending up in your clothes, and then you bringing those particles into your shelter. These types of suits are easily cleaned. Use a soft bristled broom or brush and clean off every surface, every nook and cranny on this suit to get off those fallout particles. Do this outside your shelter, inside your little area. That vestibule outside the shelter. It could be the steps that are coming down into it, whatever it is, before you enter your shelter. If the particles will not come off, these rubberized suits, you can use water. So potentially use a sponge, use some water that's sitting outside waiting if you have it, and wipe off these suits, spray them off, whatever. Don't get mask filters wet. Clean them off and then set them out to drip dry. Put them back on when you exit the shelter. These Russian suits, the boots are already part of it. So you don't need to wear boots in the suit. I would recommend using a tennis shoe, a soft shoe. Put that on when you wear the suit so that it fits better on your body and you got some protection between your foot and whatever's on the ground. If you can't get a hold of a Russian suit or an Eastern European rubberized suit, not just a poncho, the actual rubberized suits, you can use rain suits. Not a poncho like this, okay? You want a rubberized rain suit, top and bottom, pants, jacket. Put those pants on, slip some type of rubberized boot up underneath on your feet, underneath the pant leg of the rubberized pant. Then put the jacket over the top, close up each opening as tight as you can. If need be, use a little bit of duct tape. Just like with this, you're trying to keep the fallout particles off of your body, off of your clothing. Another item, rubberized gloves. You can use rubberized dishwashing gloves if you don't have access to an actual chemical glove. It will work in this situation. Make sure to tape the cuffs around the glove to prevent stuff from coming up your sleeve. And the last item you would need, some type of respirator, gas mask, protective mask, to keep those radioactive particles from ending up in your lungs. This is an Israeli civil defense mask. A lot of these were brought in during the 90s and early 2000s. You might be able to come across them. They'll work just fine. You could potentially use a hazmat mask that's on the market. You're just trying to make sure to protect your airways. Now I know someone's going to freak out that, oh my God, there's a Russian filter on this. The Russian filters have asbestos. Well, ask yourself this simple question, which I'm sure the Russians did. Which will kill you quicker? Getting 1 or 2 asbestos fibers in your lungs? Or getting radioactive fallout dust into your lungs? Which will kill you faster? If all you can get is the Russian filter, use it sparingly. Only in a situation like this, you know, you're exiting your shelter post-nuclear strike. But I really would recommend you get a hold of something else. A NATO filter of some type, preferably American C2A1, like was used on the M40 mask series. Those are a lot better, a lot safer for the person using it. And in this situation, protecting against nuclear fallout inhalation, the C2A1 filters, it doesn't matter which one you use. It could be one that's in the metal can that's considered out of date, doesn't matter. It could be one of them that didn't pass the inspection for use against protection against chemical weapons. In this situation, doesn't matter. It's still going to work as a filter. It just won't filter out nerve agents. But in this situation, you're protecting against large particles, large radioactive particles. That will get filtered out real easily. So, be careful with your mask. Do not damage them. If you get some type of tear or something in them, please repair them as best you can before you go out and leave your shelter again. Make sure to protect your eyes, protect your air passages, and keep fallout off of your skin and out of your clothing. Now, wrap up on these 2 videos. Review the priority listing of what's more important to get into your shelter first, or if you're occupying a temporary shelter, things to bring with you to guarantee or increase your chances of survival in this situation. First off, your number 1 priority is water. You need at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for drinking alone. If you plan on doing any type of cleaning, allot 2 to 4 additional gallons per person. Now, for washing yourself, you only really need to do that personal hygiene once a week inside this situation. If you're preparing meals so that people have, you know, a somewhat of a home-cooked meal, you have to have some additional water for cleaning the pots and pans on that. That comes from that additional 2 to 4 gallons. Is that per day, per week? That's going to be up to you in your situation. Next priority is food. Recommendations, and this was from Civil Defense, and I agree with it. Foods that require as little preparation as possible that you can hopefully eat cold. You don't have to cook it to eat it. So your canned grocery items is your number 1 option. It's your cheapest option. Right behind that is pre-packaged rations such as military MREs or HDRs, humanitarian daily rations. Even with those, you still have to have water to drink to wash it down. After food, first aid. A basic first aid kit from the store is not going to be enough. You are going to be your medical professional inside your fallout shelter. So you need to be able to handle those burns, those breaks, those cuts inside your shelter. You are the one who's going to have to treat when someone has bad constipation or dysentery. Have those additional supplies. I would recommend also going to, say, a Red Cross first aid class or some other type of medical training. After first aid, a radio. Battery-powered radio so that you can get information. You can find out what's going on around you, what happened, and find out what the current radiation detection is. And you can hear guidance, recommendations from the quote-unquote authorities on when you can leave your shelter. But make sure to have some of those old civil defense books. Get a copy of Nuclear War Survival Skills by Crescent Kearney and read up on that, especially when you're in the shelter, give you more information as to when you can exit. So that when that information comes over to radio, you can double check it to make sure it is safe. After a radio, sanitation, personal hygiene, and a privy, a toilet. You're probably not going to have a flush toilet. You're probably going to have to use some type of homemade outhouse, essentially, inside your shelter. After your privy, bedding, blankets, a sleeping bag or a wool blanket per person. Now, as for actual bedding, have a cot or a bunk so that at least one for every 2 people, preferably 1 per person. But you may be in a situation where you don't have enough room to have all that extra bedding. You may have to do what's referred to in the U.S. Navy as hot bunking. That bunk will be used by 1 person for 12 hours a day, another person 12 hours a day. In the public fallout shelters, civil defense used to have a rotation scheduled for hot bunking for 8 hours. 1 person on that bunk for 8 hours, then someone else on it for 8 hours, then someone else for 8 hours, and then you start the cycle all over again. After blankets, I added in there lights. This wasn't in a lot of that stuff from back in the Cold War, but I think now technologies have improved. A lot easier in that stuff. Have some lights in there. You don't need to light up every nook and cranny in your shelter all the time. Have a bare minimum of lighting in there. You can see your food as you eat it. You can see it as you prepare it. You can see your body as you're doing your personal hygiene. You can see as you're reading from the Bible. Make sure you have sufficient power source or fuel for the lighting. After lights, a firearm. At least 1 inside that shelter. You may have to, at some time during your stay in there, people may be pounding on the door to get inside to get what you have. They know there's a locked door there. There's probably something important inside. They're going to try forcing their way in. And you need to protect yourself and your loved ones because they will kill you to take what you have. They're not just going to take what they want and leave you alone. They will kill you and take it all. You must be prepared to defend yourself. You must train everyone inside that shelter how to use that firearm or those firearms. Hopefully you have more than 1. Train everyone, to include small children, how to safely handle it, clean it, load it, unload it. How to clear stoppages. Make sure everyone knows that. Teach them that in those first few days. After firearm, MWR. Morale, welfare, and recreation. Have that Bible in there so that you can finally come to Jesus, understand why you lived. Some books, some games to take your mind off of stuff. The situation that you're in. Potentially, if you have the power source to be able to do it, some movies, some music. Take your mind off of things for a little while. Tools. So you can do minor repairs in your shelter. Any items you have in there, make sure you have tools to repair it. If you have a generator providing power, which should not be directly in your shelter, it should be outside it, but in a location that you can easily access so that you can refuel it, you can maintain it. Make sure you had the tools to be able to fix stuff on it. Make sure you had the parts. Make sure you had the tools that you can do an emergency extraction from your shelter, an emergency escape, in case your primary and your alternate routes out have been blocked for some reason. Who knows why? And make sure to have firefighting equipment. A small fire inside a small confined space like a fallout shelter can spread quickly and kill everyone inside. You want to be able to fight that fire, put it out as soon as it happens. Hopefully without poisoning everyone inside from the chemicals in the extinguisher. Lastly, spare clothes. At a minimum, spare t-shirts, socks, undergarments. It wouldn't hurt to have some other clothing in case the temperature drops because of nuclear winter. You want sweatshirts, long pants to have in there. Maybe a few jackets, just in case. And then have some sets of rubberized protective clothing, respirator, aka gas mask, aka protective mask, so that when people first leave the shelter and they go outside, they're protected against any fallout particles that could be suspended in the air, could be blown around while they're walking around outside if the breeze picks up. Now, some additional things I want to mention, some safety notes. First off, on the firearm, keep very positive control on this. Someone could potentially get suicidal because their world is now over. It was destroyed in nuclear flames and fallout. They may not want to live to go on. You had to drag this person into the shelter. Make sure to keep them away from the firearm or any dangerous weapons. You may have noticed I don't have alcohol written on here. Because in this situation, the chance that someone who normally doesn't drink a drop in their life could, out of depression, become an alcoholic and drink themselves to death. If you have any alcohol in your shelter, make sure to tightly control it so that someone doesn't do that. If you see someone starts developing some type of habit that is destructive for themselves or for the other people in the shelter, nip that shit in the butt right away before it becomes a problem. And it could cost someone their life. You can survive a nuclear Armageddon. People have to survive to rebuild afterwards. The human race must go on. And you don't want the only people that survive to be some tribesman on an island in the middle of the Pacific or someone high up in the mountains in the southern hemisphere. Don't let science, technology, history die in the nuclear flames. You must go on. You must survive. And then afterwards, for those of you so inclined, spread the word of God so that people know who to respect for them being alive, who to pray to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons, let us try.